Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Market, where every day we discuss everything to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and how to make or ideally save a lot of money on the internet when the rest of the market is determined to make you lose money instead of make it or save it. Loaded up for discussion today, we have crypto traders liquidating a whopping $2.3 billion as Trump tariffs have an effect. We'll be breaking down what the tariffs are, how they're operating, and some general market thoughts, as obviously the market has taken a very, very significant hit over the last 48 hours, actually, just kind of endless sell pressure over the weekend. So we'll discuss that in a bit. Also got maybe a quite fitting pain presale raising 50,000 souls, $10 million so far, with another 24 hours to go. And Berachain, Boyco, hits $3 billion in deposits as liquidity bootstrapping for its chain comes to a close. We'll touch on that as well. And we've also got the latest on price action on crypto and NFTs, plus general discussion on market thoughts, and maybe going through some of the key thoughts leaders' thoughts as well today. So stay tuned for that. I have got with me Legendary and Brad. We're ready to get into it. But just a reminder, friends, nothing that we say here is financial advice. This market is very, very risky, and therefore you should do your own research and understand this is not financial advice. That is it. Looking forward to get into it now with that out of the way. Brad, it's Monday. It's the 3rd of February. How you doing, my man?
If I look distracted, it's because I'm speed entering all of my fantasy top decks for the week. I sometimes I forget, like I get in Monday and start doing some stuff, and then tournament starts, and like I have all these goddamn cards. I need to like put them to work. So I just did a lot of that. But yeah, week's good. You know me. I don't do the price thing. I am though dealing with, speaking of, I'll stay on the crypto topic. I got this GM band, which is like a Whoop, but for like crypto. It's built on Particle Network.
I love it.
Yeah, met Max at
live
at
social
DevCon.
shopping vision. You
Oh
just
yeah,
keep
that's
reinforcing
me.
it.
Yeah,
Keep reinforcing it, Brad.
I got a plant.
What? So we're going into horticulture. We're going into gardening as
well. It's not me. It would die without my other half here. She's she doesn't have animals, therefore we have a lot of plants. She's really good at that. So she wouldn't let me have a plastic one, which is what I usually go with. So I have a live one over there. Give me some clean oxygen in here.
I like it. Sticking to the crypto asset just for a second, because we're going to come back to live social shopping again multiple times as we keep going on the show. So sticking just to the crypto today, did you at least know this time? This is what me and Legendary were talking about yesterday. Like, is Brad going to know that the market's tanking at the moment? Did that come across your radar at all?
Again, it's always timeline. I woke up, like, we talked about it before the show. It's like, I don't even have a way to like see that the price is down. Like, it's out of my flow of like, okay, check price, okay, check wallet, okay, check whatever. Got on, see the timeline a little bit. I started like going through all the like 150,000 notifications that I have because the timeline's a little fucked up. So like, I start working through that, and then through osmosis of my notifications, I found it would appear things are different right now. It is different today. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know my numbers. I don't know how, like, where my portfolio is at. I don't. Yeah.
Interesting. The osmosis of notifications. I like that.
Train doesn't stop, phrase. Bro. You're not. Are you done building modern market because price is a little sideways?
I've got a great little segment on that, which I'm going to be directing at you, especially to do with Mega ETH as well, because I mean, we'll get into that, but I like your line of thinking there. Legendary, how about you? What's going on your side? Everyone's kind of, are people noticing in the comments? Seems like they're noticing. You look quite proud that I think maybe people have noticed that you're wearing red. Is that why you're looking so happy?
Yeah, very infatuated with myself, GM. That Kelana has noticed that I chose this particular hue of red for the show today. Comments are
when I'm traveling, I can't see the comments, but I knew when you were sharing comments that's why you were sharing the comments.
Yeah, but comments are on fire. Kashmir is saying Brett is not a trader, he's a believer. Kelana is also saying it would appear we are poor today. Brett, circa February 2025. Oxy is going all caps lock a little sideways. Brad, Comments are indeed on fire. I'm doing quite well. I think we
I saw
have.
someone say ETH is dead now, like dead. There's like a liquidation or some shit. Like the drop was so big that something had to happen. I don't know. I didn't even look at the price.
We'll get
rumor
it.
has it.
We'll get it.
We'll fill you in what's going on with ETH, Brett. Don't worry about it. Legendary's got that section in just a minute. As you said, guys, we're going to get into all the headlines in just a little bit, including what the hell is happening with ETH, so that Brett finds out and so that all of you know as well. But let's start with the price action. As always, with the majors, we have Bitcoin not that bad, although not great either, down 4% to $95,000. ETH is down 15% to 2,600, which weirdly doesn't sound as bad as what it was at one point. Legendary's going to break that down a little bit later. Solana is also down 5% to $198. I think that bounced from about 180, went as low as that. And just so you know, I think ETH went as low as 2,100 at one point in time. Getting into the meme coin side of thing. Oh, just got to pick out one other thing. You know, it might not be considered a major yet, but I don't know how Hyperliquid is up 3% on the day when there's absolute carnage everywhere else. Sui's down 13%, AVAX is down 17%. All these things are down almost double digits, and Hyperliquid is just up 3%. Absolutely outrageous. Getting into the meme coin side of things, got Doge down 13% to 25 cents. Pepe's down 20%. Trump down 14%. Bonk's down 20%. These ones are pushing towards the 20% down day. Like Pengu's down 13%. Fartcoin is up 16%. I hadn't seen that before. I don't know what's going on, guys. Why is Fartcoin up 16%? So Hype and Fartcoin is the flight to quality at the moment, it seems. Do with that information or draw whatever conclusions you want from that information. I'm not certain what the conclusion is. Brett is down 20%, AI16Z 15% down. Okay, everything down 10 to 20%, basically, apart from Fartcoin. Oh, interesting. Arc is up 15% as well on the AI side, but I definitely would not say like AI has been spared here. Like everything is pretty aggressively red. But I think you knew that already. Getting into the headlines themselves, we have obviously huge liquidations, whopping $2.3 billion as Trump's tariffs really jolted the market. So that's the news that Trump kind of instigated these tariffs against Mexico, Canada, and I think it was China as well. Legendary's going to break that down and kind of explain what the mechanics are there and why it's having the effect on the market that it's had. The Pain presale has raised 50,000 SOL, which is $10 million so far, with another 24 hours to go. This is, I think it's by the Memeland team, though I haven't seen any official comms on that at the moment. Definitely seen some kind of connection between them at some point in time. So we'll, digest what that means as well in a little bit. And then, as we said, Berachain's Boyco, which is like their bootstrapping liquidity event, hit $3 billion. And I think that's in addition to the 2-point-something billion, which went into the pre-vaults. So attracted a lot of liquidity there. We'll touch on that towards the end of the show today. Some notable sales on NFTs, like CryptoPunks is still selling. Like, interestingly, despite all this stuff going on, CryptoPunks selling in that 40 ETH region. So no real capitulation on those top NFTs, although Legendary, I suspect there might be some deeper capitulation on the others. What's going on there?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually was looking at CryptoPunks this morning, but no dump to be had, nothing nice to be had on the floor. However, as you said, price action looks a bit different for NFTs. We have Bored Apes, not really fussed by everything what's going on, down 1.5% over the last 24 hours, sitting at a 12.4 ETH floor. We have Pudgies, 10.1 ETH floor, down 34% over the last 7 days, down another 7% over the last 24 hours, getting very close to losing that 10 ETH floor. Azuki is down 25% over the week, down another 4.6% over the last 24 hours, sliding under 3 ETH. Azuki floor is now at a very, very low floor of 2.9 ETH, especially if you look at that in terms of US dollar value. Milady is also down over the week, down 13%, 4.5 ETH floor for them, down another 6% over the last 24 hours as well. Doodle's down 14%, 3.7 ETH 3.74 ETH floor for them, down 7.6% over the last 24 hours. There was the reason why Bored Apes seem to not really be fussed about that is that there was a wallet which has previously been sweeping apes who just bought apes, I think a couple hours ago, yesterday again, with a good amount of size, and I think has increased the holding to more than 60 apes now. So that might be the reason why apes seem to be more stable as opposed to the other quote unquote major JPEG collections.
Yeah, I think I saw that tweet from Cyrus, which was that a wallet with like $40 million had decided yesterday that was the time to come in and sweep Bored Apes. Shout out to the Bored Ape community, to be fair. Like, they've been around the longest. They've been through they're kind of ahead in this whole cycle in terms of tokens and the distribution, that type of stuff, and trying to build out with the DAO. And I think they're doing great. I don't know if they get as much love anymore because obviously there's like newer projects that have tokens coming and have kind of routinely get more attention, but real center points for the Web3 community, I think. Right,
getting into those other ones like they're novel, but they're rerunning the Bored Ape model, right? Like
yeah,
yeah,
exactly. But I think what's cool, what's interesting is that although there are newer things coming, they're still there. The Bored Apes still there, still at the top or thereabouts, doing their thing. So shout out to them.
And that's not a given. Like we've seen,
absolutely not a given.
Yeah,
so hard. So yeah, great work there. Let's get into the Web3 Roundup. There's a few more other bits of news, although we're going to be predominantly focusing on the market stuff today. Movement Labs pre-vaults starting to open tomorrow with an Athena integration. We've obviously had Boyco, which is the Berachain pre-vaults. Now we're going to have Movement Labs starting as well. This seems to be the way to do liquidity bootstrapping now. This seems to be the trend. It's also being done by Concrete, and Concrete, as I said, I think I mentioned on the show last week, is backed by Van Eck and one of the funds beginning with a P. But Van Eck was the notable one in my head. In other news, India announces it will review its crypto position due to global changes. Obviously, India incredibly strong and significant in the global economy now. This piece of news I got from Legendary's timeline: Tinder swindler to launch meme coin on Valentine's Day. I wonder where the market will be for that special event. And then finally, Pudgy Penguins announced Basic Fun partnership to get Pudgy toys in amusement parks nationwide. Some more uplifting news, I think, towards the end there. Right, that's the Web3 Roundup. Before we get into the main stuff, and we have got a lot of main stuff to do today, so let's just quickly catch up on the other stuff. Brad, anything catching your attention there in particular?
I'm going to go off-piste because that shit sucks. Frankly, it's all price stuff that I don't really care about. None of that stuff interests me. So I'll say Starknet. This is for the nerds out there, as I like to talk to the nerds. So Starknet has recently announced that they're going to simultaneously settle to Ethereum and Bitcoin as an L2, which creates a lot of consternation in the technical community. So because
why are they doing that? Like, what's the thinking?
I mean, they've always been Bitcoin pilled. So it's they think they increase security by leveraging Bitcoin. The consternation on the technical community is that typically like these L2s, like what it means to settle to something is it means like that's where you derive your truth from, right? So Mega ETH, when we come live, we'll settle to Ethereum. It means you can go around us to go to our contract on Ethereum, and that is what tells us what the truth of the chain is, right? What the state of the chain is, what's, who owns what, all that shit, right? So if you are to say that you settle to two places, that would imply that you have two sources of truth, which doesn't make any sense, right? How do you settle to one place and another place if something were to happen on Bitcoin, right, to reorg the chain, like it jeopardizes your L2? How does that fucking work? So there's been a lot of like infighting, frankly, that like, is this marketing claims? Have they uncovered something that's kind of cool, different, whatever? TBD on that. But that's the thing that's catching my attention. We're getting in nerd fights over here. I was actually fighting the ZK Sync founder nicely about like horizontal versus vertical scaling amongst L2s, playful, whatever, just like this whole, because everyone does this like L2s aren't competitors shit. So like I went straight up and was like, no, we're fucking competing against ZK Sync. Yeah, of course we are. And that's okay.
I like it. I like the competitive aspect, embracing the competitive aspect. I think that's important. And maybe something within, is it like an Ethereum thing? Like non-competitive, public,
It's alignment.
public
Yeah, it's like
goods.
this like
Let's all
yeah, I
be on
mean
the same team, and I don't know.
some treaty shit acting like L2s don't impact L1, acting like L2s don't impact other L2s. We're all growing the pie as opposed to like stealing from each other, but kind of stealing from each other, homie.
Mm.
Whether that's
Yeah,
net good or bad, TBD.
interesting stuff. Okay, nice to check in with what the nerds are getting involved in. I think there are people in the comments are appreciating that little check-in. Legendary, what about you? Before we get into the meat of the stuff today, what's on your mind?
Honestly, nothing from the Web3 roundup. I think the Tindler presale that I had mentioned, I find that hilarious. But we'll also talk to the Pain presale, which I have a couple of thoughts on that equally can be applied for Tinder. So nothing really that I wanted to dive deeper into today.
Okay, I had just a quick. Actually, I'll save that question for later because I can ask Brad about this. What's it called? Liquidity bootstrapping stuff. I can do that in the Berachain
Oh
section.
yeah.
So,
Yep.
I think it's interesting. It's an interesting trend, but we'll touch on it later. Look, I think most people are here today to kind of listen in to thoughts on the market. The weekend has pretty much ravaged majors, memes, everything. Everything has got ravaged. I thought it'd be interesting to just touch in with a few perspectives from leading thinkers first. Start it, and then we'll kind of break down the specifics. Starting with Mando on the timeline, he said some thoughts and advice for today. He said stocks are only down 1.5%. Macro's a little weak, but don't seek an explanation of what just happened to alts. For alts, this really started with huge token supply fears after Melania and leverage into inauguration. Every headline since then caused a nuke. The casino isn't over, it's just being reset. There are a record $218 billion of stables on chain. That was a really interesting data point that came out, I think even before this happened at the back end of last week, that there are so many stables now on chain in general. So don't revenge trade with leverage, at least for a few days. Again, we've been talking about these particular coins all of last week, seem to be doing the best. JLP continues to show it's the best way to get exposure to majors. Alts with revenue will continue to outperform Hype, Jupiter, Ray. Notably, those particular protocols are also buying back their token all the time. Hyperliquid buying back their token all the time. Jupiter announced that I think 50% of their fees are going to be dedicated to buying back the token. So, those kind of fundamentally fee earning protocols that are committed to buy back their token seem to be performing best. I mentioned at the top of the show, Hype is up 3% today. I find that astounding. No matter how strong a coin is, I haven't checked with Jupiter and JLP. Maybe Legendary will have that data in a sec. He said the cycle isn't over, but don't be surprised if Bitcoin dominance keeps rising. And then maybe just a small point for if you're feeling a bit down today because of the market. Said you were not the genius you thought you were when you made the money. You are not the idiot you feel like today. So much opportunity to make it back over the next few weeks and more. Kind of agree with that final sentiment for sure. Just touching in with what Zeneca said. He said, no sugarcoating it. The market is brutalizing everything but Bitcoin at the moment. There's an insane amount of FUD going around now. I think sometimes people forget what FUD stands for: fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Obviously, the tariffs, which we'll touch on in a bit, has started it, but also general market weariness. Like, okay, fine, the tariffs hit, but I think there's a very reasonable point that the market was kind of in a frenzy here, right? This all of the since Trump's and Melania's coins, it's just been insane. Every few days, another coin sucking all the liquidity and all the attention. I think people were very, very exhausted of that kind of being on that hamster wheel. It's hard to say how warranted it is, but whenever I think about it, I realize that nothing fundamentally has changed. He is doing everything he said he would. He has followed through on all the promises so far. One of the things he said is that he would be the crypto president, and we have a ton of positive changes already made. Ross Freed, SBR proposed, Gensler gone, Crypto Council and Czar, etc., etc. He then goes on to kind of share some thoughts. In his opinion, there's kind of a consolidation happening. I think that's what people do in these types of moments where you have maybe too many assets. You kind of consolidate into what you like best. And yeah, there's no guarantee. That's probably the message there. I'm going to pause there.
I like Seneca's like ability to just reflect, and he's a good writer. Like I know he's a trader, but he's also just a good writer. Like he frequently will come forward with these things and have a good way of articulating his thoughts and feelings that I think a lot of people it resonates with a lot of people. But I've always appreciated that about him.
Yeah, and I kind of ending on a similar message, which I think must be wise. If I think some of the best traders are kind of ending on that message, don't let it get you too down. You're still in a better position than most, and you're in roughly the right place at roughly the right time, surrounded by opportunities. I think that's an awesome way to phrase it. It's like if you, for whatever reason, we're just in the wrong asset at the wrong moment, like you're here in this market with these people, as all of these things are coalescing around crypto. Like it's close. It's close. Legendary, wanted to come to you here for some reflections as well, and then we're going to kind of switch it up a bit.
Yeah, both posts are very great, and I think the important thing is really to consider that we are still in a very good market. It's still, I know people lost a lot of money, I know people got liquidated, but the majors still looking very fine. The mid to long term perspective looks very fine. The opportunities that you have in crypto are still looking very, very good. And I feel like a lot of people also put a lot of pressure on themselves, especially if it's the first cycle, to make it in the first cycle. You know, I have this theory of mine where I say it takes you 3 cycles to make it. The first one is where you round trip. The second one is where you have PTSD and don't believe how much things can go higher. And the third one is where you actually kind of make it. But I also think that specifically, I think it was Seneca was the one saying that you get exactly what you voted for with Trump. And it is his last presidency. He is a bit on a like kind of quote unquote revenge mission, or however you want to call that. And he doesn't have the need to be re-elected because that is not possible. So he is going to play hardball with some of the things. And that is exactly going to instill a bit of uncertainty into the market, because nobody knows what he is willing to do and how far he's willing to push a negotiation, which is clearly affecting the stock markets. When OSF has posted the post that we went, it was Mando, the post that we went through first, stocks didn't look that bad. If you look at how Europe has opened, and if you look how much more down the pre-markets are for the US stocks, actually situation looks significantly worse from when he had posted that. But the general message is still standing and unaffected by that, of course.
On the Trump comment, pull up this meme. This is one from the weekend. I don't normally retweet other people's shit, frankly, just like straight up retweet it, especially if it's a meme. I had to do this one because it was so hilarious. It's John Charbonneau. He's a technical writer. Like he writes these big long form things. Dude, I had to. This is so perfect. It's a so
just walking through bread for people.
Yeah, let's say for people who aren't like able to see the screen. So it's a guy and a girl, right? So the girl's against the wall. She's all excited, and the guy's sitting there with something behind his back, and she's all excited. She goes, "Is it a Bitcoin strategic reserve?" All excitedly, and then you look at the present. He's hiding behind his back, and it says global trade war. So everyone's all excited that Trump is in office. We're gonna get all this thing. It's up only, and then he drops this bomb on us. Figuratively, but you know, and now, yeah, it's you get what you ask for, kind of thing.
Indeed. I definitely want to talk about that like in more detail, because there's a pretty deeper question to that, like to what extent we think this is going to play out for a long term. Is it something that's just a bit of theatrics at the beginning? I'm pretty sure last time when he was president, he was like incredibly theatrical with I can't remember if it was Putin or Kim Jong-un. He was coming out with outrageous things back then, like really, really inflammatory things, and people were really scared. And then, you know, then it was just like it created a moment, it created a conversation. Then things seemed to get smoothed over. Like he's obviously going to do it in a kind of bombastic way, and it kind of worked out last time, from what I remember. Although I know people have very many issues with his tactics sometimes, but I guess we'll see. I had one final question before we get into the details on the tariffs, because I think that'll be really helpful. Legendary's going to break that down. Maybe this was more a question for you, Brad, where I had this to say, like I know things are incredibly volatile, and I think that's something that Trump's going to be unpredictable. And I thought, I tweeted this morning, in a strange way, I think volatility might be a better environment for builders now, because I think people would have been incredibly distracted when everything was going up in a straight line on Trump election, into inauguration, into his meme coins going to multi-billion-dollar valuations. And then market participants were hardly focused on anything specifically either, just like going from one thing to the other. It really felt like January, the month, was just a complete frenzy, looking back, and we're only just touching February now. And an unpredictable president might urge a little bit more caution from everyone and take some of the chaotic energy out of the market. Like, it feels like, had to get some of that chaos out. I'd be curious from your perspective, given that you guys are building at Mega ETH, like, what's your view on that? Does it not make a difference at all? Are you actually appreciative of the moment where some of that nonsense can get out, or it doesn't matter to you at all?
Yeah, so I recognize that I'm kind of a unique persona in this paradigm. Like this stuff doesn't distract me too much. And I know that's not the case for everyone.
But it still is
right?
distracting other people, right?
Yeah, but so like for me as a builder, it doesn't do it. I know for a fact it does to a lot of people who are, because like obvious reasons, right? It's fun, it's exciting, it's energy, whatever, all that stuff. It's chaotic, right? So, and then even for me, like, yeah, it's hard to ship something whenever there's like no one gives a shit, because the next runner is,
Thing, right?
gonna drop overnight from, Kanye, right? Like that's the thing people care about and are staying up all night for. They do not get like, Uniswap V4 just dropped, right? I didn't see it in our announcements, but that's like a years long buildup that these guys have been building for. We had so Intense, like V4 is for Intense and for hooks, which takes a lot of stuff, frankly, off chain in the EVM world, but allows for you to do some like weird complex shit, right? It's like there's a pump fund competitor now and again they launch, right? Yeah, and which like they showed that like now whenever you buy and sell out of their platform, on the back end they use these hooks to actually run it through Aave, so that they're actually collecting the yield on the position that you're trading in and out of, as opposed to taxing you as a user, right? So like there's some cool stuff being done that has been, again, years in the launch. We were talking about this shit like, I don't know, back when 4844 came out, smart wallets, like whenever that was going to save the world, a year and a half ago probably is when this was being teased. So like, that stuff is finally coming to the market, and people are just like, man, no one fucking sees it. Like it's hard to get away from the liquidity suck of the Trump coin, or the Kanye is tweeting again, or the like whatever is dropping meme that like, okay, yeah, now we've reset a little bit. Now maybe you can appreciate some of the stuff that's coming to market. You have time, like you don't feel like you're burning your literal like soul trying to like do anything meaningful. You have to pay attention to the timeline and your group chats to make sure whatever. So yeah, I think there's something there. A little bit of a post-nut clarity.
Yeah. I very much resonate with that. Like also from a creator's perspective, I have posted on the Uniswap V4 upgrade, and I've been like legitimately asking the question, what is the biggest improvement? Because I wanted to be educated on that. Didn't get any like answer on that. Like all the answers were, oh, they changed the number from 3 to 4. Talk about something else and you'll get all the engagement in the world. And the other thing is, and that's the thing that I find frustrating, is founders trying to time their TGEs. Like I talk to founders who are like, oh, I'm waiting for the right market conditions to launch. I want to launch my token in a bull market. And today I'm seeing messages on the timeline, launch is postponed due to market conditions. Like just launch your fucking token. It's going to dump either way after that, unless you're hyper liquid, unless you're like the one motherfucker who has nailed it down, is the perfect exception, and then keep building. And don't worry if you launch when ETH is at 3K or at 3.4K or at 2.5K. It doesn't fucking matter.
It's hard, isn't it? It's really, really hard. I mean, maybe this is another thing to talk about when Berachain, like I think the whole Boyco thing has happened perfectly timed. I think there is something to timing. Like timing can help you, but only for so much. Like it can maybe amplify you. It can maybe get you a little bit of extra TVL depending on the market moment at that specific
time. I think
time,
surprise is better than timing. Like so timing matters. It does.
It's not going to save you though, is it?
Yeah.
It's not going to save you.
No.
But yeah, like I've been thinking the same thing. There's some projects now. It's like pretty sure this stuff was meant to come out in September last year, or summer, or before summer, and It's like, yeah, delays, waiting for the right time. Maybe it's never the right time. We'll have to see. Let's get into the tariff stuff then. That's the main thing of the day. The market has obviously responded quite poorly to that. Legendary, what is going on with the tariffs? What has Trump proposed? How did people react? And why do you think the market reacted this way?
Yeah, absolutely. That is the story of the day. I'm sharing it on screen. Donald Trump has shared on Truth Social that he's implemented a 25% tariff on imports from both Mexico and Canada, 10% specifically on Canadian energy, and an additional 10% tariff on China. Market has reacted to that pretty strongly, starting with crypto first. It's obviously the main headline. We've seen liquidations over the last 24 hours as high as 2.3 billion in total, most of that being liquidated in ETH liquidation 600 mil, BTC 457 mil, and then all the other tokens. Sol only 85 mil. That was the one side of the market reactions. In terms of the stocks, German French stock markets down 2%. London FTSE 100 dropped a bit more than 1%. The pre-markets for the US stocks, which we've seen at -2, -2.5%. So pretty significant reaction when it comes to that too. The thing that I really want to get into is, what is a tariff? How does it work? What does it mean from a macroeconomical perspective? At least the tariffs can be super complex, but like at least the 101 on that. So basically, tariff is a tax that is added on top of that. It's added to the imports in that case specifically. I think the example that we've seen on the timeline was the Canadian maple syrup, which was, say, $100 before, slap a 25% tariff on that. The same syrup is now $125. Why does it matter? Obviously, as a consumer, as a customer, you might go to a different product. And this was one of the examples. Let me get that up on screen as well, that Adam brought up. So you have, let's look at this example specifically. You have two companies, an American and Canadian one, both making widgets for $10 each. You slap a 25% tariff on the Canadian one, it's now $12.50. The American company can increase the price to $11.50 and still come out as the cheaper option. That's obviously one of the ways this can play out. There are substitutes. You don't need to necessarily use, going back to the maple syrup example, maple syrup. You can use a different kind of syrup, or there is an American one that you can buy. So then there's this part of that. Then the additional complexity comes in from more complex supply chains when you just can't shift them around. And this is what you've seen playing out in the European stock markets, where the car makers have been hit very significantly. They have obviously a very complex supply chain with all the parts that go into making a car, and you can't very quickly say, oh, okay, this part we've imported from Mexico, we're gonna source that now from a country that is not affected by the tariffs. So these things also take time to change, and the typical result of tariffs is then obviously that the cost gets passed on to you as a customer, as a consumer. Then there's been a lot of talk on the inflation side of things, and the inflation side of things is a bit more complex. It's going to be a bit of an explanation on that, because that is relevant in as how the market will react, how
let's do it.
The interest rates will react, because I've seen it argued both ways. Fed will have to raise rates, Fed will have to do quantitative easing. So if you look at those two charts that I'm sharing on screen, I'm going to zoom in a bit more. From a Forbes article. So what you typically have is when you impose a tariff, the price goes up immediately. So you will see this is this chart. You have a steady inflation rate. You have a tariff that gets implemented that pumps price up, but then the inflation rate per se stays constant unless the tariffs get increased more and more over the coming years. Whereas this is like the chart how a basically increasing inflation rate would look like. So that is one important thing to keep in mind, that this impact of tariffs is something that the market sees playing out pretty quickly in terms of the price actions. It's like more of a one-time effect. However, it still means that companies are facing higher costs. There's still this inflation fear, because tariffs can obviously, the war can escalate. You have retaliatory tariffs coming back from Canada. Trump would still have the move to raise tariffs even further. And that is something that he has threatened with Colombia before, who said, I'm going to just increase tariffs by another 25% every week until you do what I want you to do. So there is exactly more uncertainty because nobody really knows how far he will push that, which also results, because just the American economy is so much bigger than the Canadian or the Mexican one, in the dollar being a specifically strong currency. Look at the American to Canadian dollar exchange rate, trading at 147 right now, at a very, very historical low, I think since 20 years for the Canadian dollar. So it is directly impacting that. I think Kashmir also had made the point in the YouTube comments like 10, 15 minutes ago that this is putting the dollar in a very strong position, but still you have inflation fears, you have this risk off mode, which you see for playing out for stocks, which you see playing out for crypto, because you just don't know how much further this will go. Is it really just a show, as you said, B? Is it something that he's willing to keep up until Mexico or Canada are giving in? And it's also, if you have tariffs that are specifically like flat tariffs like this covering everything, it makes investing way less attractive. Or it also puts then the pressure on companies to cut costs at some point, which then again could lead to unemployment rising, which then could push stocks down even further, and at some point then sustainably push inflation up. So the Fed would have to react. At some point, there might be a rate hike even coming, until you might have an event that forces later on quantitative easing. So the key thing, I think, is tariffs are super complex, and there's a lot of like strategies how different markets will react, trying to substitute products, trying to adapt supply chains, not being able to do that and pass on prices. Because Trump can push this way further, this is the major reason why we see that like FUD in the market, because we just don't know how far and how long he's willing to sustain this this game theoretical political warfare. And the immediate result of that is that the market wants to go risk off assets. And also in the short term, this is, and that's a point that a couple of people have making, this is not necessarily, also Kruger Marker has been making that point, this is not necessarily bullish for Bitcoin in the short term. Again, we're not talking about like all the other good things and the Bitcoin reserve that might be coming as well. We're just talking from the like general market theory that this is typically causing a flight to risk off assets and not a flight into risk on assets. And especially it's not, there's no like mechanism that would want to make you buy Bitcoin specifically as a result of that. It's not like, oh, inflation is high, I'm going to flee to gold, I'm going to flee into Bitcoin. That's not the same here.
Okay. Excellent summary and thoughts. The one way I would distill that, to try to make sense of all that, is that it feels like in your explanation, you're saying, the tariffs are inflationary or potentially inflationary. That means that rates will not necessarily be able to be cut quickly, given that that's something that people were expecting, right? People were hoping and expecting for rates to continue to be cut. If tariffs are inflationary, you cannot do more rate cuts, because that would be also inflationary in some way. So that would make things kind of get out of control in that respect. Just to give a little bit more details on the news itself, this is from the BBC today. You mentioned a few tariffs that Trump has already spoken about. He mentioned targeted tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China, but he's also gone ahead and said that US tariffs on imports from the EU will definitely happen. He does not rule out imposing tariffs on the UK goods, and says the country is out of line. However, these are all, it's funny how they put these in these quotes into the sentences. He says, but the situation can be worked out with PM Keir Starmer, Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who has been, quote, has been very nice. Trump says he will speak to Mexico and Canada's leaders on Monday, so that's today. US tariffs of 25% on the two countries' goods and a 10% tariff on Chinese goods are due to kick in from Tuesday. So it does seem like there's meetings today to discuss whether those things are going to happen. Said Canada and Mexico are set to impose retaliatory tariffs, while China will implement corresponding countermeasures and plans to file a lawsuit with the World Trade Organization. I don't think those things typically go anywhere ever. Asian markets, as a consequence of this, were the first ones to open since Trump's tariffs announcement on the weekend, and they tumbled significantly. So, we mentioned just a few countries off the bat, but sounds like everyone's going to get it, or at least that's how Trump is posturing at the moment. Any reflections on that further posturing, Legendary? I just came out like, look, I'm not an economic expert in any way at all. I just don't think I think this is him forcing to like come to, like, it's what he did last time. He just comes out and says stuff. I'm not an economic expert, right? But watching his behavior from last time, where he just comes out and says stuff, and then people end up round a table, and then the thing goes away. Like, that's what I think this is. But again, not an economic expert, maybe just observing pattern behavior. What do you think, Ledge?
The fascinating thing about that is that we are not used to that type of negotiation strategies in international politics anymore. Like, it's typically a very diplomatic, slow escalation process. And Trump's like, "Yep, this is the ace. I'm going to play it, and we're starting at 25% tariffs for everyone, and I'm willing to go up from there even further." Like, that's not typically how negotiations play out in the international landscape, and that's very, very fascinating to watch with him. And it will be interesting. Like, Cashman in the comments was saying Trump not letting EU go, though he's going to bully you guys until the end. He has something against the EU. And this is interesting because the EU is typically not put in a position where they have to react to something like that. Canada, obviously, being so close to the US, is typically not in a position where they have to react to a 25% tariff on everything. And I think there's been a couple news coming out of Canada on how to support businesses that have been impacted by that. So I have no idea how this is going to play out. I mean, there's people like yourself saying, with a lot of reason behind that thought, that this show will only go on for a week and then they have to fold just as a matter of fact, because the American economy is so much bigger. And then you have other people say this could go on for way longer if nobody wants to budge that quickly. And we also don't know what his next move is going to be. So again, I can explain how tariffs work, but I definitely cannot explain how this thing is gonna play out.
You can't explain how Trump works.
No.
That is not one of the things you're able to predict. Bread, any reflections in this arena? I know sometimes you like to stay out of this one, but any thoughts?
I have two. One is your observation that, like, yeah, he just says stuff, and then I think he makes the ultimate decision based on the reaction that he gets out of the weird things that he says. Like, I think that's like his modus operandi, which is fine. Like, that's just kind of how he's always been. He says weird, wacky shit. Says like, oh, maybe that kind of worked, or okay, I need to back off, and then makes the decision actually after the fact. And that's just kind of what he does. He's really great at actually reading the room when it comes to that, I guess. And then the second thing is, when like macro broadly, right? You ever like, you don't want to start a movie or a video game or a animated series or something simply because it's too big. Like, it's intimidating as a thing to enter into. Like, you just can't take on the workload of understanding the universe, understanding, the mechanics, understanding the whatever, right? That's macro to me. I think I've finally resolved, like, Legendary's going through tariff breakdown stuff, and it's like, as he's doing that, he's like, oh, but then you didn't think about the thing over here, and then, oh, the implications of this guy doing this shit over here, and then, like, oh, it doesn't actually count because back in 2017 it did a thing, and then, like, it's just like my brain is so goddamn full of talking about scaling and ZK stuff, and like whether or not berberine is good for me as a supplement to like survive another like 5 years at the end of my life, that like I don't have the mental capacity to worry about something as large as macro. So it's just like I'm along for the wave.
Yeah, I think there's definite merit sometimes to knowing where to cut off the attention span. So like, there's only so much bandwidth every person has to dedicate to the variety of things which I think are important. So definitely can sympathize there. So look, I think we've been through it. I think that is the information that people need, or at least a download of the information that people need. That's at least partly the reason why the crypto market, we always try and link this to the crypto markets and why that's relevant. That's at least in part why they've sold off. We also mentioned, the outrageous levels of greed and risk that people just took in January. Kind of not only starting off with the Trump and Melania coins, but in general, there was a lot of risk being taken. And I think in general, it needed to cool off. So I think that's part of it too. And I think that's all that people need to know with respect to that stuff. We'll keep on top of it to the extent that we need to as the week goes on. But let's keep it moving. Then we've only got 9 minutes left of the show. I think it's right to spend more time on that because that's where the majority of people's heads will be at. So that's why we wanted to spend most time there. But we also want to touch on, this is an interesting headline, maybe very timely, Brad. There is a pain pre-sale at the moment, and you would have thought that maybe people were in too much pain to participate, but it doesn't necessarily look that way.
Yeah, I mean, this one's gonna be super quick. You actually tweeted on it. Yeah, here's the Pain site. So Pain is a meme coin pre-sale that's going on right now, correlated to Harold, the famous meme you guys may have seen, sitting there holding the coffee cup. If you're on the screen right now, it's just kind of like whenever like looking at the screen, which obviously sucks. Yeah, there you go. It's on screen now. So it's just associated with that. It's loosely also affiliated to the the meme land team, where we think Bcheck tweeted on that the other day. We're not unconfirmed, but like there's some loose affiliations there. We don't actually know. And they have up to, or just over, I think it's like 10.6 now, million tokens in pre-sale obligations from people sending in Sol hoping for their stuff. So yeah, it's just something that popped up out of nowhere. It's relevant for the market sentiment right now. It kind of reminds me of what was it back in 2021 whenever Trolls Goblin Town launched, right? Everyone, like, it was down only, and then Goblin Town launched. Then we had people talking like goblins in spaces for like a week and a half. They ran to like 10 plus ETH a piece. Probably relevant in that same sense. Probably also as meant for this world long term, about price wise. I would imagine this thing goes the way of goblins and Goblin Town. But yeah, that popped off recently.
Fair enough. Appreciate the download of information here. Legendary, what did you think on this? Like, the market seems to have needed to cool off, but I think we were speaking earlier, and you're like, this is going to be an interesting indicator for you for like how people are feeling right now, what the general sentiment is. How are you viewing this pre-sale?
Yeah, I kind of like the headers post out the dichotomy of the market. On the one hand, 2 billion get liquidated. On the other hand, we are still very happy to send 10 billion into a pre-sale. The casino never sleeps well very accurately commented under that. And I mean, if we look at the biggest pre-sales, obviously, I think it was Ignas who had the DeFi researcher post on that all of them are like down anywhere between 60 to 90%. And that's probably gonna, at least in the mid to long term, take the same route of going down. But undeniably, the timing for this is beautiful to come out with the Pain pre-sale after this weekend, and it's still open for another 24 hours. So I'm curious to see how much money will go in. I think I said it in a group chat where I'm like, on the one hand, I don't really want to participate in that, but on the other hand, I feel like I have to, at least throw 25, 50 Sol, something at that to just see how it plays out. But I'm still undecided if I'm going to do that. But this is my thinking, that at least the timing of it is amusing. And I don't know, I feel like a lot of people are saying, that maybe it goes back to the first headline, that we needed to have this reset in the market and open interests getting flushed out a bit, et cetera, et cetera. And we now will move to a more sustainable future. And maybe I've been, becoming more cynical over the years in crypto, but I just don't think that the gambling goes away, because this has always been one of the major use cases or applications, and people love to gamble and hyper gamble. And there's going to be new casinos and new patrons. So I still think that those pre-sales will at least attract a shit ton of capital.
Okay. I think that's very fair. Just to confirm to people, although the Pain official account doesn't seem to have any Memeland branding on it, like it has been retweeted by the Memeland account a lot. I think that's probably obvious. I just wanted to be like definitively clear whether or not it was like affiliated or not. There's a bunch of retweets about the Pain pre-sale on the main account for people's context, and if you want to go find it. Okay. So that Pain pre-sale is happening. Interested to see how much more liquidity goes in that direction over the next 24 hours. The final thing I guess I wanted to touch on was the Boyco pre-vault. So this is the Berachain pre-vault. It's kind of their liquidity bootstrapping event where they are kind of gathering together funds and allocating it towards protocols so that they have liquidity to start off when mainnet goes live. This is the second kind of liquidity gathering event, what they're calling liquidity bootstrapping event. The first one was like a pre-vault, which took place a week or two ago. This is the second one. It lasted for a few days, and they raised 3.3 billion in that time, and that's in addition to the 2 billion that went into the pre-vaults beforehand. So a really huge amount of capital here that's been directed towards Berachain. I thought it was interesting because I thought the timing has probably worked out pretty well for them. Having said that, the market did start to sell off over the weekend, and it didn't seem to really deter anyone from wanting to get exposure here. So I think it's interesting that they managed to raise that amount of capital. I think it's also interesting that this pre-vault style mechanism is being used. I mentioned in the Web3 Roundup that Movement Labs have just announced their pre-vault as well. I think that's going live tomorrow, I think, from the headline, or it's coming. And that's going to be like their liquidity bootstrapping moment. So this seems to be a new strategy to collect capital at the beginning. And I wanted to go to Brad to kind of ask what he thinks on that. Obviously, maybe Mega ETH is further away at the moment, but this has definitely been a shift in the way that people are collecting capital. Like, what's your observation here? What do you think about it? It seems to be quite successful the way things are going at the moment.
Successful, and yes, it's something we're working through programs now. We're trying to come up with some ideas to attract capital of assets that we trust throughout the ecosystem, same way that these guys have done it. You want to, like, the conditionals are like, you obviously want to make it net positive for the ecosystem, right? You don't want to attract dead capital. Our goal is to attract active capital. But honestly, as time has gone on, I'm like, it is useful, right? You want liquidity depth, you want this stuff, but I think it has been over-indexed in on the Ethereum side of the world, frankly, because, and like, I know Berachain is an L1 that's, it's outside, it's built on liquidity, right? Proof of liquidity is its thing. But like, just reflecting on how Solana has had success and what that has looked like and how the market has valued that, right? If you look at it now, Solana has $10 billion in total TVL to Ethereum 70 billion, right? 60 billion. So 70 billion total, 10 in Solana. And despite Solana having much, much lower in TVL liquidity, like it's not super, super deep, the velocity is so high in that ecosystem, right? Which allows people to calculate the value of the ecosystem through this like abundance mindset of like an aggregate, the fees and the activity and the volume and the REV, real economic values, how like Blockworks values it, is going through the roof. So even though like liquidity is not deep, velocity is high, and through velocity and access and users and volume, like people are seeing real value in that kind of environment. And I say that because we have like 2% total of all of Ethereum bridged to these L2s. And it makes me think that depending on how the structure of these L2s, that they're actually wildly potentially mispriced. If like, okay, like, oh, there's no TVL there. Oh, there's like, they're just cheap. They're just whatever. But it's like, that's how Solana has seen a lot of success. So like, so these things are cool. Like, yes, it's something you need. You need to have like a basal level of liquidity to allow for the craziness to happen on top of the apps. But I'm starting to think that it really is. It's always been like the meme, like L2s versus Solana, not Ethereum versus Solana. I'm starting to think like, yeah, like the actual environments that are being propped up by these things is kind of playing out the same way. And if that is true, and we're valuing a high velocity, low liquidity environment like Solana at $150 billion, what is meaningfully different between that and an L2? And it gets tricky because the tokenomics of these L2s are a little wonky, right? You don't have potentially the native token as like the main thing that's used as a medium of exchange that's used for Ethereum. So like, that's just all to say that yes, we're working on liquidity. Liquidity is important. It's kind of the thing of the day. When we think the way that especially Berachain has done it was well executed, frankly. We'll be doing it, but I'm thinking it's over indexed broadly. Is like, you need infinite money depth like you see on Ethereum to be valuable as an ecosystem. because Solana is showing us otherwise.
Interesting. I've got a phrase for you, Brad. If Berachain doing proof of liquidity, proof of velocity is a nice
There we go.
nice phrase, right? I've always been interested in the conversations that you have when you're talking about value accrual. It's like, well, how do you value all these new things? And one of the crutches that people always lean on is liquidity, right? It's like, this is the TVL, therefore whatever. And I guess we're in the process of trying to come up with some other metrics.
Yeah, it's important to realize no one knows what the fuck this ecosystem is valued at. Any of these ecosystems, no one has a firm idea of how to value this stuff. It's so nascent and new and developing and ever changing, right? So like that's why you have people like Blockworks spending all this time to come up with metrics to try to quantify. Like, okay, clearly Solana's price is going up. Why the fuck is that price going up when it's cheap to operate on the chain? Okay, there has to be something else, either psychologically or materially on the chain that is leading to price increase. How can we quantify that? And that's where you start saying, okay, well, if we look at the total tips that are being sent to validators on top of the fees that are being paid for MEV on top of the volume that's being done, like, so like trying to just like articulate like why is it growing? We don't know. And yeah, it's like there's no rules. You can literally look at a chain, cut up your own shit and say like, this is a way to value this stuff. And you're just as credible as most of the people in this space.
Nice, nice way to close it out. Legendary, any final reflections before we close it out for today?
Brett's closing words were so beautiful. I'm not going to ruin them.
How do we summarize that? Anyone can say whatever they want. Everyone else is incompetent.
It's empowering, man. This place is so nascent that like you can just like control your destiny. Like be something in the space. There's no reason you can't.
Be something, do something, say something, just do it over and over again every single day. That's kind of what we do. And we just keep doing it. So definitely can get behind that message. Just a reminder, friends, we do this every single day, as we just said. Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern time for 1 hour. We're live on X in the spaces where you might be. We're live on video as well, on Twitter video and on YouTube if you haven't seen us there and would prefer to watch in. And you can catch up on Apple and Spotify podcasts. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, thank you to Legendary and Bread for co-hosting with me as usual. We hope you have a wonderful day. Take care, and we will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.